What's going on, campaigners? Welcome back to another episode of The Campaign Grind. I am Pedro Diaz, I am your host, and this is The Campaign Grind. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about whether a career politician has the upper hand in a campaign, or does a political outsider have the upper hand in a campaign. So, first things first, let's talk about a career politician. Career politicians are career politicians. They've been elected into office in the past. This is not their first rodeo. They have a lot of baggage. No matter whether they run in a small town or a big town, they got baggage. They've voted on certain issues that might have not been favorable for the community that elected them, or they might have done God knows what. So, a career politician, it is very difficult to run against a really good, aggressive, and formidable outsider. The reason why is because you're much more vulnerable. You've been in the public eye for quite some time. It is easier for you to raise some cash, but the reality is if you do have a formidable opponent that knows exactly how to poke holes into your sail, listen, your boat's not going to be going anywhere.
Well, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that.
About what?
And the reason is that, a politician who's been an incumbent already, it's got name recognition. A lot of voters don't take the time to inform themselves really
a lot of voters
on the background of who they're going to vote for and so on. And it's sometimes it is really unpredictable. If the incumbent has, I don't want to say half done his job well.
Well, his or her job well.
Yeah, he got something positive going for that. Also, he was able to raise money before.
Yeah.
He knows the map or the road, to
and
get
how to fundraise.
How to fundraise. So it's a lot of things when you're in the second term around. It's like if you've been married before.
Yeah, you know what to expect.
Third time, it's.
No, I understand, but what I'm trying to get at is a first-time candidate. Let's say an entrepreneur, for instance, Donald Trump. He was a political outsider. Yeah, he was involved in campaigns and elections way back when because he was one of these donors and he was always hosting these fundraising events and so on and so forth. But I believe that in this day and age, especially with the voter bloc actually getting younger, I believe, especially here locally, I believe that the politicians are changing, or the people that we elect are changing because it's a different demographic.
Yeah, and the campaigning has changed completely.
Oh,
because
campaigning, absolutely.
You have the social media is being used tremendously.
Yeah.
Really, people relate more to social media than anything else.
Well, where do you get your news from?
Social media.
Yeah.
Unless I watch Fox News.
Fox News. But so basically, the incumbent, they always have an upper hand because they have that name recognition. They have access to those lobbyists. This is not their first rodeo. They can raise money very easily, and they kind of know exactly the insides of campaigns and elections.
And you mentioned something. I think that we all politically inclined one way or another because we all politicians in our own way, in our jobs, in our
in our marriages,
everything. You're always negotiating issues, But and I wouldn't call Donald Trump an outsider. I know a lot of people say, well, he's not an outsider. This guy's traveled around the world many times. This guy's donated money to a lot of politicians and so on, and he's been well versed on the issues for the last half a century.
Yeah,
he's been there. He has things that interviews that he's had 25, 30 or more years ago are coming to reality right now on issues like North Korea and many other things, and so on. So that's very important. He had a presence. Donald Trump had a presence. Do you have a presence in the community? Well, Donald Trump had The Apprentice. Remember that. That made him a national actor. He was on television. He had a lot of experience.
Absolutely.
That most of it. NAR donated $30 million to his campaign.
The NAR, NRA.
NRA. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I understand.
So
now I'm not saying that just a Joe off the street. Well, no, I am actually saying a Joe off the street can beat an incumbent, depending on the way that they develop and tailor their campaign's message and how aggressive they go about campaigning. But what I'm trying to get at is an incumbent, a career politician, has an upper hand. They've been there, they've done that, they have the relationships with these particular donors, they know exactly how to get things done and kind of go around different certain things.
Today, the constituency is much more informed and pays more attention through social media, through television, news, everything else than in the past. You know, in the past we didn't have all these tools available.
Correct.
You know, you didn't know what happened in Europe for a couple of months. You know,
yeah.
Today, 2 seconds later, you know what happened in Beijing. You know,
absolutely.
So this has made a big change, and also we have a big millennial population.
Well, I'm glad you brought up millennials because we're going to be talking about that for one of the tips and tricks and part of the strategy for these first-time candidates or these outsider candidates. But before we jump into that, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to give us a call, 1-888-688-DIAZ, 1-888-688-DIAZ. So we agree that a incumbent has the upper hand in any election that they get involved in?
Well, I wouldn't say all of them, but I would say they have, I would say that they have a leverage on the fact that they have had exposure, they've been out there, they have name recognition, they've been able to raise funds before,
correct,
and so on. So, you know, this is all advantages that a newcomer doesn't have, you know, and you have to be a very strong, I would say, today, because of knowledge in the community and people being more aware and more participating and so on, I would say that you have to be a strong, you have to be, you know, really a hardliner when you go out there, and you have to defend your position and so on.
Yeah.
And you might have, you know, I remember many campaigns years ago. It was a couple of guys running for the office. I see now, you know, look at Donald Trump's campaign. I had 17 people, you know, up there on the, you know, on the stage with him from the same party. You know, so, you know, this is becoming very tough, and you gotta have the money, and you gotta, I say, you have to. Again, this is not you have to have a strategist, because you're gonna have to really, you know the roads and get around the things, because you know, if you have opponents, they all you don't want to duplicate their message either, you know, and so on. So you gotta have attitude.
No, absolutely. I didn't want this episode to be about Donald Trump or anything like that. It just kind of turned out to be like that.
It's a good example.
It's a very good example, because most of the viewers here know who Donald Trump is, rather than mentioning, you know, a local candidate here. No, not you, but a local candidate here that they might have never heard of. So, you know, Donald, like I said, this episode is not about Donald Trump or anything like that. Whether you like him or you don't like him, you know, he is the president. But this episode was really more geared towards who has the upper hand, and different tips, tricks, and strategies on how to help the average candidate, the non-incumbent, basically compete or even beat an incumbent. So, going back to what you're saying, these incumbents, they've been elected into office for quite some time now, or most incumbents have been elected for quite some time. So, the way that they ran for their re-election, you know, is not necessarily the same way that you should run your re-election if your re-election were held today. As I say in every or almost every single episode, but I tell all of our clients, you know, times change, campaigns need to change too. Your strategy needs to change. So what worked for you when you first got elected in 1996 or 1987 may not necessarily work, you know, today in 2018. Your strategy is going to have to change, your approach is going to have to change, your strategy and your messaging is going to have to change. So that is with the incumbents, okay? And a lot of incumbents are very superstitious. So they're going to stick with who's gotten them elected in the past.
And age factor is making a big difference today too.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah,
I was surprised because of Donald Trump's age. That's why, you know.
You know how old he is?
You know, I think he's 71 now.
72.
Yeah,
72 years old. And he uses Twitter.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Some people say too much.
Yeah. But so going back to what I was saying is, times change, campaigns need to change too. Just because you've worked with that consultant, you know, in the past, and their strategy has not changed, listen, does not necessarily mean you have to stick with that consultant. Times change, campaigns need to change too, and your strategy needs to evolve with times as well, especially now in this digital era where social media and news is at your fingertips. So now to the part that all of you and all of us here in the studio, in the office, have been waiting for, is how to help, or what advice or strategies or tips and tricks would we give to a first-time candidate, okay, or not even a first-time candidate, an outside candidate, in order to beat an incumbent candidate, somebody that's been there in the past. So, Mr. Rey Valdez, he ran for against an incumbent a couple of years ago.
That wasn't my plan, though.
He was supposed to run for higher office.
State Senate.
He came back, and then he ended up running against an incumbent. What was your experience as an outsider, a first-time candidate, running against an incumbent with an unlimited amount of money in his war chest?
That was a tough game. I had to appeal to a lot of freebies, let's say, and make a lot of personal presence. Show up at different events. I didn't have the resources. My opponent, or the other candidate, the incumbent, had a lot of support from the party.
Yeah.
The party actually gave him a lot of funds, and I didn't have that option, and so I appealed a lot to the community, through radio, some of the local newspaper issues and so on, and I tried to go directly to the voters.
Yeah.
So that was I did a lot of door knocking,
and it was very difficult. I remember in your campaign, it was very difficult to really raise some money because people didn't know exactly who you were. It was the first time you ran, and you were running against an incumbent, even though that he kind of jumped back into his seat. He wasn't going to be running for re-election.
Yeah.
But I remember it was very difficult.
He was a gentleman.
Yeah.
We're friends. He called me up and he said, I'm going to revert back to running again for my old seat for my seat because he decided not to run into the incumbent on that other seat, who ended up not running anyways.
Yeah.
She had mentioned she was not going to run for her last period that she had available to her yet, and then all of a sudden in the last 3 months of the campaign or so, she decided to
come back.
Yeah. That made a big difference.
Yeah. So if you guys are watching and you've waited this long to hear the tips, strategies, and tricks that we use till this day to help our candidates, our first-time candidates, our unknown candidates, not only compete but really beat the incumbents and beat their asses real good.
Knowing the issues in your community, and also being aware of the party participation, or the number of voters for each party or your party in your district or where you're running, that makes a big difference too.
Makes a huge difference.
If you're going to run in the district where you got one party's got 80% of the votes,
don't waste your time going there.
Yeah.
That is part of that strategy.
Also in tune with the community, or the biggest factor community in the area.
Yeah,
that's very important.
That's part of the strategy. Do your due diligence. Okay, so before we move forward, get your notepad out, get your pen and paper out. So write this down. If you're a first-time candidate, you're an unknown candidate, you want to run for office, the only seat you really have an option for is running against an incumbent. I'm going to give you some tips and strategies and maybe a few tricks here and there onto how to run a very successful, aggressive campaign that may not necessarily, you may not necessarily lose, you may win. So take notes. Number one, what he said, know your district. Do your due diligence, find out how many Republicans, how many Democrats, the demographics of the district. Very easy to pull that information. Go to your elections department or your local elections department. Pull that information. Do a little bit of research. You're gonna have to be familiar with Excel in order to kind of break down the demographics, age, ethnicities, so on and so forth. That's number one. Know your audience. Okay, like in any business, you got to know your audience. In your campaign, know your voters. Know exactly who are the quality voters that are going to be coming out to vote in your particular election. How old are they? Are they Hispanics? Are they Anglos? Are they blacks? Are they Jews? You know your audience. So like that, you can kind of tailor your message according to those audience. Number two, make sure, depending where you're running, if you're running for a municipal race, you're running for a state race, reach out to the clerk's office and get a list of all the lobbyists that do business with that district, that city, that county, that state, most importantly that district, so you know exactly who has an interest within your community, within the area that you're going to be running. Send them emails, okay? This is going to help you raise cash. Send them emails, send them an introductory email. Hi, my name is Pedro, I'm running for office. I'd love nothing more than to take 5-10 minutes of your time over some coffee, let you know what my candidacy is all about, my vision for a better Miami, a better Florida. Send them an introductory email. Chances are they're not going to respond to you because they don't know who the hell Pedro is. Call them. Once you pull that public records request file from the clerk's office of those lobbyists, you're going to have their email and their phone number. So after you send that email, call them. They may not answer because they're not going to recognize the phone number. Once you call, leave a voicemail. Text them. Hey, John, it's Pedro. I just left you a voicemail. Give me a call when you get a chance. Would love nothing more than to get together. You know, do that constant follow-up. It's just like if you're running for, applying for a job. If you're going to apply for a job and you go and just hand in your resume and just wait and cross your fingers until somebody calls you back, listen, you're not going to get hired. They're not going to call you back. People, especially over here, like me, I'm very aggressive. I'm very picky with whom we hire. You got to be very aggressive, do that follow-up and so on and so forth. And you got to be persistent. So you got to do the same exact thing when you want to meet and get in front of these lobbyists that can potentially donate to your campaign. So number one, know your audience. Number two, reach out to the lobbyists that have an interest within your county, within your city, within your district, and hit them up for money. Try to schedule a meeting with them first because they're not going to right out the bat cut you a check.
I want to mention also, lobbyists represent organizations.
Correct.
So, a lot of organizations in your district or your municipality or whatever it is, that they do candidate interviews. Make sure you do go to the interviews.
To all the interviews.
Yeah. To all the interviews.
Even if you know you're not going to get it because you may not be qualified, or you believe you're not qualified, or because you may believe it's a waste of time. Listen, getting in front of these people is never a waste of time.
And they all have voter numbers. Remember, if you go and say a teachers union or fire department or whichever it is,
they all have a base.
They have a base, and they follow. A lot of times they follow what their union says.
Yeah.
Or so when they invite you, if you don't show up, that's a mistake because your opponent is going to show up. And if you show up and your opponent doesn't show up, most probably they'll give you
that opportunity.
Their support.
Now, I know that union endorsements and all these endorsements, newspaper endorsements, sounds great on paper and it looks great on paper. But the reality is that that's not going to win your election. Just because you get the local newspaper's endorsement, just because you get a certain union endorsement, does not solidify your candidacy. Does not guarantee you a win in your campaign.
Part of the saturation, though.
Yeah, it helps. It helps. But believe it or not, Ray, most of the candidates that we've represented and have won, of course, have not had any endorsements. And I like it that way. The reason why is because once a candidate doesn't get an endorsement, they're kind of like running with that chip on their shoulder. Like, am I not good enough? I got to work harder. I got to do more. I don't have enough money. I don't have that big family name. So they kind of hustle a little more because they're not the preferred to win. And like I said, I've actually won more races with candidates that have not had any endorsements than I have with clients that have had endorsements. So just because you don't get that endorsement, listen, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of your campaign. Hustle, grind, do what your competition is not willing to do. Now, endorsements, like I said, they do look good on paper. They do look good for some fundraising efforts and stuff like that. But it's not going to make you or guarantee you a win in your campaign. So, number one, know your audience. Number two, reach out to the lobbyists and the people that do business within your area and try to schedule a meeting with them. Let them know exactly who you are, what you're running for, what your plan is. Okay, and then establish that rapport with these people so that they can in turn donate to your campaign. And then the third and final tip I'm going to give you guys, which is really the most important one that has like a whole bunch of shit compacted into it, is basically, once you know your audience, you're raising a little bit of cash, develop your campaign's message. How do I develop my campaign's message? Knock on doors. Figure out exactly what the issues are within your community, within the different pockets of your district. That's how you're going to know exactly when you're knocking on the northern part of your district what the issue is. The issue is crime, so I'm going to pound the hell out of crime. You know, once I'm in the southern part of the district, the issue is traffic. I'm going to pound the hell out of traffic there. So knocking on doors, talking to voters, that's exactly how you determine and figure out your campaign's message. If you have the resources to do a poll, do a poll. But guaranteed that the best way to do it is knocking on doors. The reason why is because polls can tell you whatever they want to tell you. Any pollster can fabricate these numbers. But you're going to know what the issues are because you're personally knocking on these doors, talking to these particular voters. Okay. Number two, I guess it's 2B or 3B, sorry, because that's like the third part of the third, or second part of the third point, whatever. Don't forget to go after the untapped voters. What the hell are the untapped voters? It's what he said earlier on in the show. Millennials. Okay. Everybody overlooks millennials. The reason why is because when you're running for office, you're told to go after the traditional voters, the baby boomers and the generation before the baby boomers. But the reality is, millennials, I'm a millennial, and everybody here in the office are millennials. We vote. We're over 18. Yeah, you're a millennial too. So
almost 100 years old.
No, we're over the age of 18. We can vote. So make sure you go after these millennials. Okay, these millennials are overlooked because they are not the traditional voters and stuff like that and whatnot. But what I've come to realize is, specifically with the millennials and the younger generations, is that a lot of campaigns have kind of forgotten about them. They go with the traditional system, the traditional strategy, mail, phone calling, knocking on doors and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that's not going to work, but that will work once you're going after the traditional voters. In order to appeal to the millennials and these younger voters, you know, talk to them on their terms, you know, on their court. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. You know, talk to them there, text them, knock on their door, introduce yourself. So be open with them. Millennials and the younger generations like to be a part of something. So if you bring them on board into your campaign, let them be a part of your campaign. Let them be in charge of walking this particular block or being the precinct captain for that particular precinct. You know, motivate them, engage them. And then they're going to go off and talk to their friends, and their friends are going to talk to their friends, and next thing you know, your name is spreading like wildfire. Okay, why? Because you're motivating and engaging, cultivating this base that is normally overlooked. So don't forget the millennials. Don't forget the younger voters. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to be a millennial to go after millennials. Talk to them on their terms, on their court. Social media. Everybody has social media right now. It's free. It's easy to engage with the voters there. It's easy to put your information out there. It's easy for them to comment and message you and communicate back and forth. Okay? So I'm not saying to neglect the traditional voters, but just don't forget and don't neglect these untapped voters, the millennials. So, any questions?
No. That's exactly what it is.
You good?
Yep.
Okay.
You know, it's very important. And, you know, a lot of people stay away, or people and you know, a lot of elderly stay away from computers and a lot of these things. But the young voter, that's it. And they, you know, you want to appeal to them.
Yeah.
And social media, kind of when you start participating, getting involved in social media and so on, it becomes more personal. Because it's like you're right face to face. You know, the people are watching you right there. They know where you stand. You express your opinion easier. You reach, you know, a lot more people that you could otherwise. And at the same time, like you well mentioned, it's cheap or no cost.
Exactly. And honestly, in our company, you know, we got to go and reach out to candidates that have filed to run for office. That's how we kind of fill our pipeline and get our clients. And yeah, we send them emails. Yeah, we call them. But the trick, or what we really do, is we follow them on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We message them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, on all social media platforms. And believe it or not, we get the most responses from Facebook messaging, Instagram messaging, or even Twitter DMs. So utilize those tools. You have professional judges. I just got off the phone before we started recording this with two judges that we had communication with over Facebook. So they weren't responding to our emails, they weren't responding to our phone calls, but they were communicating with us back and forth. And these are judges, these are elected officials, these are, you know, baby boomers, or maybe even the generation before baby boom, I don't know. But, you know, they're utilizing Facebook to communicate with somebody to do business. So when you're communicating with them, there's no reason why you can't utilize, you know, the tools, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat, if you got Snapchat, to communicate. That's how we conduct business here. That's how we reach out to a lot of our clients, and they respond to us there. But do you have anything else to add?
No, it's excellent. I think that, you know, and also within all these formats, there is different apps that you can use.
Yeah,
you know,
to communicate with the voters. So, guys, I want to thank you very much for tuning into this week's episode of The Campaign Grind. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to give us a call. 1-888-688-DIAZ, 1-888-688-DIAZ. Until next time, I am Pedro Diaz, signing out.